What's up, guys? Today we're going to be focusing on how to scale in life insurance sales from the 0 to 10K mark in profit. The reason why we're just looking at this particular portion is because this is the hardest portion, and once you can scale past that, at that point you're able to scale your agency. So what we want to focus on is what tools is it going to take to get us from 0 to 10, and then after that, there's some different components that come in. Full disclaimer, I'm right at the tip of that, so things are starting to change in my agency when we look at that, but getting to that 10K mark, that's what most people are looking to do, and there's a lot of shade around there where people kind of hide it, and the focus needs to be getting to that point, and then at that you can scale. So the first thing we're going to look at is, first, this does depend on your IMO. Okay, so before the IMO police come on me, it just depends. Whatever your comp is and anything like that, it all depends on what your IMO is and that whole stuff. So this is more of generalities with this type of industry, and you can do with that depending on your certain situation. So in most cases, you are getting a 75% advance when you sell an insurance product. So this is very important to remember, especially when you're starting out, because when you first start selling, you're not going to see 25% of your business until you've been there a year. So what you want to focus on is being able to just make it to that 1 year mark, because after that, you're finally able to actually get the 25% of your business that you haven't been able to have access to because you're only getting 75% advances in your business. The next one is chargebacks are going to happen. So as I've continued to do this, I am not really concerned with getting someone in a policy. I want to make sure that they know what they're getting, because this is a different type of sale. I know a lot of people say sales is sales, but with insurance, it's a little bit different of a sale because there's such a long period that they do have to hold that policy, that I would rather weed them out in the beginning of the prospecting phase and during that presentation, because if I know they're going to charge back in 2-3 months, I'd rather just not deal with the chargeback and just not put that person in. Now, there are some cases where I mess up and, chargebacks happen. But, if you want to get your chargeback rate at like 10, 15, 20%, like really, really low, even 5%, that's the biggest indicator of that, is making sure that you're only talking to people who actually want the product. While in the beginning, it's going to be hard because you're going to want that money. But setting your business up in order to be able to do that, it just makes it a whole lot easier. The next one is going to be leads are leads. I am under that impression. But expensive leads don't mean good. I ran into this in the beginning, spending a lot on leads for, quote, nice leads, and it didn't really work out too well. So, what we want to look at when we are looking at leads, we want to look at what is our ROI on what we're getting. So when we spend that money, what is our cost per acquisition? Because if your chargebacks are low, then the good thing is at that point, all you need to do is focus on how much money does it take in order to get that person. And then at that point, you can make sure that you're all taken care of. Now, I will kind of disclose this. Most people who are doing very, very high numbers, because you'll probably get recruited by them, the 40,000, 100,000 in the year, most of those people are using a dialer, which is fine. But that's why we want to get to the 0 to 10, and then you can decide what you want to do from that point when it comes to building an agency. So once you get past that mark, if you wanted to get into having a dialer and having somebody set appointments for you, those higher numbers, that's where you're kind of seeing the nomad lifestyle, where they're sitting there and they're just getting on appointments. That's how that looks. It's not outrageous, but that's kind of the big indicator of they're spending more on leads and they're also running dialers. So it's just making sure that you understand that as there's multiple levels to this, and the hardest hurdle for most people is getting from that 0 to 10. If you can get past that, this business gets exponentially easier. So the next one is going to be our first step is we want to make money consistently. Okay, so this is how I see it personally. I want to be able to make sure that I bring somebody in, I'm making consistent money. I'm not a recruit first person. So the first sale is important, but it's not the most important when you look at this industry. So when you want to scale, we want to make sure that we have consistent policies on a weekly basis that are staying on the books. We don't want to write chargebacks, but we can't avoid them at all. So what we want to be able to do, we want to write consistent policies every single week. So we're growing our book of business because that's going to continue to pay us. But we want to be able to scale that and go larger. So lead flow is going to be a big component of this, but at the same time, you need to have enough lead flow that you're comfortable with, that isn't too much, but also we want to make sure that we're not spending too much, because a lot of people can get kind of caught up and end up spending too much on leads. So I always think of it like this. It's like a snowball. So your lead spend is going to be a snowball. It's never going to go away. And sometimes it's really large, but you have to keep that snowball moving, because the second you slow it down, that's when you get dead in the water. So we want to create enough of a gap. I'm not telling you what leads to buy or anything like that, but we want enough of a gap to where we are able to stay in front of that. And that's where you start making a ton of money. This is a more invest and you will make more money business, but it's a very consistent business because it is very, I call it boring, but boring businesses do very, very well. So we want to make sure our lead flow is up, and so we're able to keep track of that. So what I would do is, if you're starting off, lower lead spend, cheaper leads, get some consistent off that. Say if I spend $100, I'll get one client or anything like that, and then you'll continue to scale from there. The next one is you need to decide what business you want. So I am on Zoom for the most part. So I sit on Zoom and I do Zoom appointments. I very rarely do phone. I will do some phone, but for the most part, I do Zoom. I like to see people. But what you do want to do is you want to decide what type of business you want to do, just so you're not going back and forth. I mean, occasionally if you have to do an in-home, do an in-home. But you do need to kind of decide whether you want to do one-call closes or anything like that. I much prefer Zoom, but I'm not going to tell you how to run your own business. This part is really done through brute force. Okay, so this is where most people will fail, because getting to that 0 and 10K, it is just work. It's just a lot of work, but it's one of those this is where most people fail. Only 8% of insurance agents make it past the first year. This is why. It's very, very hard, but if you keep at it, it will eventually give. So it's just brute force, talking to a ton of people, getting hung up on, sorry. But that's how that works. So you just need to brute force it, and eventually it'll go down, because at that point, once you get past that, then you have money in order to scale and put more systems in place. My next step would be to systemize. I know most people say sell some policies and build an agency. I personally just don't think that that's right. I think most agencies are run very poorly. So I would rather systemize, which is what I've been doing for a long time. So the next one is we want to create a copy and paste system and process for keeping up with agents. So this is kind of something where, recruit 10 people, only one person stays, that kind of thing. We want to make sure that everybody who comes in, there's a system that goes with it, and so our failure rate becomes much lower. This is something that can be a problem with a lot of agencies, because they'll recruit as many people as possible, and then it's kind of sink or swim. So I pick this over just build as much as you can, just because it gives you a process instead of just having people figure it out. So if the whole process is systemized, how you're going to keep track of your clients, how you're going to keep track of underwriting, it makes it a million times easier to be profitable and just not have to worry about the everyday part of the business, right? If we can systemize that, then it makes it easier. And if everybody's standardized, you're really, really able to scale an agency, because you can share VAs. Everybody has the same system. So it makes it a million times easier. So the workflows that I use are free. I'm not going to push any expensive software just because, frankly, it's not really necessary in the beginning. Later on, if you want to do it, I'm more than happy. But in the beginning, it's really not necessary. I use Notion. I'll put an affiliate link if you want to get the paid version. It's $10 a month. You don't need it at all, if I'm being honest. I use Notion for keeping my book of business, keeping my referrals, and keeping track of, beneficiaries, anything like that. And I'll do a video on how that's set up in that software. And then I do use Asana for underwriting. So I'll make another video on my Asana for underwriting. So basically what that is, it syncs with my Notion and my I guess an assistant. We just have somebody who checks in on policies. They can just go in there. It's all standardized. They just check on the policy. They make all the carrier calls. So when you have an underwriting policy, it's not like a really, really big deal to do. So that's a way to just systemize it. And both of those are free. So it's just no sales pitch. They're just free. CRMs matter, but don't get wrapped up in having a nice CRM. I've used nice CRMs. I've used shitty CRMs. It really doesn't matter. I always say if you have to pick between leads and a CRM, use a spreadsheet, track your leads, and then just when you sell them, put them in Notion. Because Notion can stay with you no matter what since it's free. So then you're not stuck transferring your book of business from CRM to CRM. So if you do want to jump around to different CRMs, you have the ability to do that, and it's not that big of a deal. Instead of having to find all your sold clients, export them, put them in a sheet, do all that. You don't have to worry about that if you do it in that way. So CRMs, they're okay. But when it comes to systematizing, most people are going to come in without that ability to just fork over $200-$300 a month or $100 a month on that stuff. I'd rather have them focusing on leads. So it's best to just have a free system in place. And then later on, if they wanted to add a CRM, and there are some CRMs I recommend, but that's more for just something later. So the next part is that's when you would build. Okay, so this is kind of backwards to most people. Most people are going to say build first, then learn to sell, and then systemize, but most people won't even systemize. Building is the next step because that's how you scale your agency. So, when we look at this, what you want to be able to do, we want to be able to sell. Because if you can't sell, nobody wants to work for you. I don't like to work for people who don't sell. The next is keep all your agents on the same process. So that's where we're going to come into systematize, keep everything in line. So then when you bring new people on, everybody's on the same page. Everybody's doing the same thing. So then if you have a problem, it's a million times easier to keep track of it. And you don't have to worry about any of the day-to-day, the weird stuff of the business. Now, the reason why I think it's very important to process is very few agencies actually have a process for agent success, and that's why so many people fail. That's really what I'm trying to avoid as I start to build is how can we take people, get them moving forward, without having to worry about the failure aspect of it. I mean, not everybody can make it. Of course, you can't have 100%. But when it comes to making sure that people stay afloat and building an agency that's going to be really, really good for you, making sure that there's systems in place that aren't going to break the bank, and then to just continue to build, that's how I choose to build my agency. So that's really the outline of how you're going to be able to get from 0 to 10. So in the beginning, remember brute force. So 0 to 10, that's where we're going to get our freedom. Once we get there, we need to build a process to go with that. And then after that, we're going to continue to build our agency. So I would say once you get to 10, that's where you need to start on the scaling portion to get past the 10K, because once you get past the 10,000, the 20,000, 30,000 profit, you're going to want to have an agency that goes with it. So 0 to 10, and then past that, that's where you get into the larger stuff. If you guys do have any questions on this, just leave a comment below. More than happy to answer all my comments. If you are interested in working with me, I'd be happy to show some systems. You can just reach out to me directly. My number is 423-620-4510. Happy to set up a meeting and meet with you guys if you have any questions about that. Other than that, that is the end. And next week, I'll hit you with another video. So, peace.